Well, it is so exciting to be with you all today to talk for a few minutes about how I was shaped by the University of Maryland. And to explain these lessons that I learned from the University of Maryland, I'd like to take you back a little bit in time. So let me take you on my journey. Step back with me to 1970. I was 9 years old and I was in the 4th grade. I liked to draw, I liked to be in plays, I liked to sing in the chorus, but here's what I didn't like. I hated Little League. I hated being in the right field, especially when a lefty came up to bat, because I was the one in the right field picking dandelions and buttercups, right? I wasn't ready to catch a ball. I didn't know there was anything unusual about this kind of combination of likes and dislikes until one day in the elementary school cafeteria on Pizza Day. Pizza Day happened once a week. It was on Thursdays, and it was my favorite day of the week. But on this particular Pizza Day, 3 4th graders, the 3 really cool 4th graders, they were the ones with the long hair and the patches on their jeans, they swaggered up to my table, and they were kind of laughing and all, and they pointed at me and they said, "You're a fairy." I froze. They called me a fairy on Pizza Day right in front of my friends. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to disappear. But this is what I call my cafeteria moment. Because we all have a cafeteria moment. Now, I honestly didn't know what being a fairy meant, but I knew it wasn't good. And so I went home after school and I talked to my mom. She took me in the den of our 1950s suburban red brick ranch house, and she sat me down and she said, "The reason they're saying this, the reason they're making fun of you, is because they're jealous." This is what she said. She said, "They're jealous that you're creative, that you're doing the things that you'd like to do, that you're happy, and that they're not." And she gently kissed me on my forehead, and then she said, "You be you." Now, my mom, yes, it's true, isn't it? My mom obviously knew what was going on, even if I didn't. For example, what 9-year-old little boy knows all of the words to the Broadway musical Fiddler on the Roof? What 9-year-old little boy would cry when Judy Garland sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow? 9-year-old little boys don't do that kind of thing. But nobody explained to me what being gay was. Nobody talked about being gay. I mean, we didn't have role models like Mayor Pete, right? Now we do, but at that time we didn't. Nobody talked about it. Nobody who was famous and successful was openly gay. Not even Liberace was openly gay. And if you don't know who Liberace is, you can just talk to your table host. They'll tell you. I just knew I didn't want to be different. And it was really humiliating to be bullied by the cool kids. But at 9 years old, what do you do with the expression, "You be you"? What did that even mean? How could the cool kids possibly be jealous of me? Was I a fairy? I mean, I remember trying to figure out what that meant. And I remember sneaking down to my brother's bedroom in the basement of our house and climbing over his waterbed, well, actually sloshing over his waterbed to the bookshelf where he had the book, Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex. And I remember trying to find out what this meant, and it wasn't even in there. So it just wasn't anywhere you could find. But eventually I did figure out what it meant, and I knew I didn't want to be that. And so for the next 10 years, I was determined not to be that. And I did everything that you could do to not be that. For example, I dated girls. I even played a sport in high school. I got a varsity letter for playing a sport. No, of course, it was boys' gymnastics. But I stayed really busy doing things that didn't involve throwing a baseball. I just didn't deal with it for 10 years. But then I got to the University of Maryland and I decided now I can take some action. But what action had I decided to take? Well, this part might surprise you. I went to the University Health Center. I made an appointment with a psychiatrist, and I got to the appointment. It was a Tuesday afternoon. It was just after Econ 101. I was nervous. I was sweating. I almost left, but then the receptionist came out. She took me back to a small office and introduced me to Dr. Joe, who I assumed was going to be my miracle psychiatrist who was going to change me. And in fact, I said to him, Dr. Joe, I need you to change me. I think I might be gay. I didn't tell him about Judy Garland because I thought he's going to have to dig for that. But I was very clear that I needed to be straight. Well, now, of course, you know what's going on. And in retrospect, I ask myself, how could I have expected any medical professional at any respected institution, especially University of Maryland, to engage in conversion therapy? Now, towards the end of that first appointment, after lots of talking and lots of crying, for the record, it wasn't Dr. Joe who was crying, he said to me, I'm not going to change you. I'm not going to try to change you. What I am going to do is try to help you feel comfortable being yourself. And then he said to me the three magic words that my mom had said to me 10 years earlier. Do you remember? You be you. Well, now, if my mom had said that to me, and Dr. Joe had said this to me, I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. Now, for me, this was all about letting out that side of me that involved wanting to sing, wanting to dance, wanting to be happy. So this first step on this You Be You journey for me was auditioning for the fall musical here at the university. At that time, it was Hair. Because I always knew that my calling was to be a Broadway star in front of an adoring audience. So I tried out for Hair. And I sang my lungs out and I danced my legs out. And at the end of the audition, the director came up to me and she said, wow, you've got chutzpah. And if you don't know what chutzpah is, talk to your table host. They'll tell you. She said, you've got chutzpah. I'm not giving you the part. In fact, I'm not giving you any part. But you do have chutzpah, and you're going to go very far in non-musical theater. Okay, so that didn't work, but I still had a whole career, a college career ahead of me here at the University of Maryland to shine, to do great things, but what to do? I mean, what do you do here at the University of Maryland? Because it's so big, there's so many choices. What do you do? I mean, all I knew is that I wanted to be a star with an adoring audience, but now I had no singing or acting talent. So what do? Government, student government. So that's what I got involved in, was student government. And what I started off with was the Student Legal Aid Office. As a freshman, I had an internship there. Now, I hadn't come from a family that was involved in social issues. We didn't talk about politics at dinner, but here at the university, I was suddenly around other kids who were really passionate about helping other people, especially in something like the Student Legal Aid Office. And then the next year, as a sophomore, I learned that there was a student on the Board of Regents. At the time, it was a 15-member board with one student. And I thought, you know what? Even though the sophomores didn't generally get that position, I thought this director of hair told me I have chutzpah, so may as well go for it. And I did. I went for it, and in fact, I got it. And I wound up learning so many lessons from the regents at the time, and also from university administrators. People who really did want to help me. And that's actually a really important lesson, is that adults really do want to help students at that point in their lives. I learned real life lessons. I mean, I certainly learned a lot about university issues like budgets and unions and faculty members, but I also learned real life lessons like how to be a gentleman, how to be prepared, how to handle criticism. For example, Blair Lee, some of you might remember who Blair Lee was. He was a regent and he was also a former governor of Maryland. He taught me the importance of being professional and, importantly, not letting your anger show when you're angry. He said to me, David, if you keep your cool and you don't respond to anger with anger, you'll always make your points more effectively. Plus, he said, with a slightly devilish grin, you'll exasperate them, which is true. He taught me whenever you're about to write that angry letter, which of course in today's terms is that impassioned email, he said, wait 24 hours. Otherwise, you'll regret it. And that's really true. The director of student affairs at the time told me when I got the appointment, he said, find a subject area, find a particular niche where you're the expert. And he said, if you do this, even though you're the student on the board, others will come to you with questions on that particular subject area. And that happened. I wound up developing kind of a semi-expertise in dormitory issues. And when a dorm issue would come up to the Board of Regents, the other regents would come to me and ask me questions. Now, of course, I got lots of other advice from regents on other types of issues. For example, one regent who was a really successful businessman, he was the vice president of what is now AT&T. He said to me, David, become a Republican. He said, you'll be happier. And he said, and even if you resist it, it's going to happen to you anyway. Another regent who was President Reagan's assistant press secretary, she said to me, David, no matter what anybody tells you about love, marry up. Okay, so after the University of Maryland, I went to Cornell Law School. I became a lawyer, and I wound up applying so many of these lessons that I learned. For example, I do my best to always be a gentleman. I do my best never to respond immediately when I'm angry. And I do have to admit, that has saved me over the years from saying so many stupid things. I did wind up developing a specialty, a niche, employment discrimination law with an even smaller niche, teaching about disability law in the employment context. And now that's what I do. I travel around the country. I teach. I get to be on stage. But I get to teach on this very specialized niche of disability employment discrimination law. And most importantly, I learned the lesson from my cafeteria moment, from my mom, from Dr. Joe. You be you. Now, every single one of us has a cafeteria moment. Now, for me, my cafeteria moment raised gay issues, but every one of us has a cafeteria moment. It doesn't have to be in a cafeteria. It could be in a sports field. It could be in a locker room. But it's a moment when you're supposed to be safe, right? But you're not, because somebody comes and tries to trample on that safety. And my message to you is, don't try to suppress your cafeteria moment. What that does is it gives it power and it gives it pain. So instead, embrace it and seize it and grow from it and celebrate what makes each of us different. Now, let me tell you two things in closing that you might be wondering about. First, no, I did not become a Republican, and I'm still happy. And second, I have now been with my partner, now husband, for over 30 years, and I did marry up. Thank you.